Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast. On today's show, I have one of the biggest names in law in Florida, Matt Lundy, and I'm not overselling it. I was joking when he came in the door that he's kind of Oz. We all deal with him, but none of us have actually ever seen him. He specializes in doing QDROS and other such vehicles that we use often in civil law for how we distribute marital assets, specifically retirements, pensions, that sort of thing. But he's also one half of the Lundy brothers, and if you live in Hillsborough County, you know Mike Lundy as well. Luckily, I scored the taller brother, as I like to refer to him today, to come in and talk about his time in family law, his time in law locally and in South Florida, his area of specialty, and hopefully we're going to talk about fish and some music as well. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. It's wonderful to be here.
So I don't know how old you are. I'm guessing we're about the same age. I'm 44. How old are you?
37.
You're shitting me.
Yeah, 3 kids and I'm 37.
No, you're not.
I swear to God.
Are you really?
Yeah, so I'm actually 8 years younger than Michael.
I didn't realize that. I thought you guys were right there close to each other.
So, I mean, being the youngest of 3 kids.
There's a third of you?
Yeah, there's a middle child. There's a sister who's in the middle.
Oh my God.
She's not a lawyer, though.
I got to meet her.
So being the third child, like, you get all of the older child's stuff. You get their music. Like, I listened to Van Halen when I was in, like, 3rd grade, you know? Yeah.
So Mike, I think Mike's like a year older than I am, or right around my age. He's 44, 45, isn't he?
He's 45 now.
Yeah. And so, 7 years younger, you said?
8.
Okay. And then your sister, does she live locally?
She did. She was in South Tampa, and she moved down to Boca Raton. We're kind of back and forth between South Florida and Tampa.
So where did you guys grow up originally?
We grew up in southwest Broward County in a little town called Cooper City.
Okay. And what did your parents do?
Our dad was a vascular surgeon, and our mom was like a sort of a jack of all trades.
Okay. Pull that mic up closer to you.
Yeah.
You can. Don't be gentle with it.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah. I just want to make sure everybody can hear you. So a vascular surgeon.
Yeah.
Wow. So the brains are in the family, and when your mom a jack of all trades, she just kind of home mom, and then whatever she needed to do to
pretty much
supplement the meager salary that a vascular
surgeon
makes.
It was a tough life for us. It was a very intense household. Everybody was very intense. So don't get the sense that because my mom wasn't the doctor that she was calm.
No, I have a picture of like a Royal Tenenbaums type experience where Mike is selling Dalmatian mice from and you're like on a tennis court with one of your shoes off.
It was like it was like that. It was a little bit more kill or be killed, but
yeah. So, was that just naturally kind of how it happened, or was that put on you by your parents, or where do you think that competition came from? Because I know a lot of families with siblings, and not all of them are like that.
My dad had 2 brothers, and they were doctors, and all of them were sort of like these Ivy League educated guys, and so I don't think they ever said anything to us. I just think that the standard was absurdly high, so it was a little bit of a pressure cooker.
Did you feel in competition with Mike, or was he just too much older?
He was, I mean, so he was 8 years older than I was, but he was 9 years ahead in school because for some reason he started a year early, and so it was a little bit too much distance between us to be in competition,
right?
Which I think is why I was able to work for him.
Yeah. I don't even think I knew that you worked for him.
Yeah, I worked for him. Not only did I work for him full time for like 4.5 years or something like that, but I was actually like when they first got an office on Howard Avenue in 2003.
What was the one that was by Dats? Before the one that they moved from?
That was the second office.
But I remember he told me one time that like he and Ben like pushed their desks up against each other.
Yeah.
And they were literally like looking at each other while they were working.
That was on Howard Avenue, and they were in this horrible loft office that had a spiral staircase, and the spiral staircase became their logo because it was so like it was like a treacherous.
Everybody knew it, yeah.
And I was on the 1st floor, and they were on the 2nd floor. And they used to call out my name and just throw things off the 2nd floor. And I would spin around this corner and run and try and dive and catch documents. Yeah, it was good times. It's not like that there anymore.
I can't imagine just working for either one of them individually. Working for both of them together. I mean, that you're battle hardened.
You know, the good thing about it is that they were, despite all, like how the area of family law is so not professional and just insane, and personally there's so much turmoil. It was very professional when it came to getting the work done. It was very intense and it was very serious.
Well, didn't he come from like securities, or did something like some kind of high-end business type of deal?
Yeah, Mike was a Wall Street securities lawyer for like 4 years before he did that.
I think applying that kind of toolbox to family law is probably part of what has helped him.
That back then it was we were in the office 12 to 14 hours a day. Mike was usually in there 7 days a week. Nobody else was, but he was.
So I have a severe Mike complex that I've talked to a little bit about because again, he and I are about the same age. And generally, just out in the, they always tell you to, the worst perspective you have is on yourself. But I've done okay. I've graduated law school. I have a beautiful family and a business, and all this stuff. But constantly, I'm looking at Mike and I'm like, damn, why am I such an idiot? Well, all this other stuff. But when I had that lunch with him and he talked to me a little bit about kind of how he got to where he was. I don't think it could have gone any other way for him. And I don't know Ben that well, but
The thing is, like, if Mike was selling pickles from a pickle barrel on the side of the highway, he'd be dead serious about being the best pickle salesman on that highway. He would be. So whatever it is, he's the kind of guy he takes driving his kid to school in the morning seriously. Like, everything is serious to him. And then he tries to kind of be nonchalant about it, but it is. He's very competitive. He's very serious.
Is Ben that way? Ben
No.
seems a little bit more the lighthearted of the two.
I think that's the yin and the yang.
Yeah,
of it,
they kind of soften each other.
Ben's serious about himself
Oh,
too,
for sure.
but
serious about himself.
I mean, he's a good lawyer.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in court with both of them, but yeah, Mike. I mean, Ben will be the first to admit it that Mike is an animal. Like, they met in law school, and Mike was just a nonstop collector of book awards. It was crazy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I two of my favorite experiences in a courtroom. One of them, I was attorney for a third party in it, but it was Sandy Solomon and Mike and.
Oh man.
Oh, it was it Judge Callan or was it Judge Thomas? But neither of them were sitting down. Not there was no procedure being followed. Both of them were just kind of ruminating on philosophy and the law and everything else. And I think the judge was even impressed by it, just kind of let it go. And I was like pinching myself, like, what's happening here? I don't even know. Are we on direct? Are we on cross? Are we making an argument? I don't even know what's happening. So that was one of them. And then there was another one, and I won't name the other firm because it would be a little bit of an embarrassment. But it was Mike and Jessica Felix against another pretty well-known law firm, and one attorney was making questioning a witness or something, and the other, or no, sorry, I got that backwards. There was an argument that I think Jessica was making, and then Mike got up and started arguing, and the other attorney said, he can't come in the middle of this, and he's like, that's in trial, that's not even this, sit down and shut up, and the judge just was like, yeah, he's right, and then it just kept going, and I was just like, to have that confidence in the courtroom is just.
I love when judges just let the two lawyers go at it, because I actually think it's sort of cathartic for the whole process to see that happen.
If you let them get it, it's like people who want to screw each other. It's like, go ahead and get it out of your system, because in a lot of ways that's what you're doing.
Yeah, it's war by proxy. Yeah, absolutely,
exactly. So, but yeah, I think if you push past a certain point, the judges just let it happen.
I'll tell you what I learned, from working for Mike, which is, in family law, you're going to have a hearing and a trial. Don't try to settle. Like, if you can't settle and give your client a bad deal. Like, if somebody wants to have a hearing at 9:00 tomorrow morning, say yes.
Yes.
Have the hearing. Give them what they want.
Right.
And then you'll see that things really do turn in your direction as the case goes on, because the judge will spot that the other lawyer is being overly aggressive if they keep trying to force hearings and stuff. He was very good about that. So anytime somebody ever wants to drag me in for a hearing, or when I have to testify as an expert now, I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah,
let's go.
I mean, he's a divisive figure locally, but I love him, and I'm a big fan of him. But I've had cases against him, and I have a legal assistant and a front desk receptionist, and he's got 30 people working for him. So he's got these beautiful
they're a machine now.
Yeah. So enough about Mike. Let's talk about you. So when you said you did 5 years there?
Yeah, I did about 5 years there.
And is that when you moved back South Florida, or?
And then I hung out for another 2, and then I had kids.
Okay. What did you do for 2?
I did some litigation,
Okay.
but I never intended to be the person that does QDROS.
So this is what I want to ask you about, because it's brilliant, and I I think so. I mean, maybe you'll tell me otherwise, but how is it that you even came upon that?
Well, I was working for them, and Mike and Ben wanted to do everything. They wanted to refer nothing out. They wanted to do everything within family law. And the few service providers that were doing it, they were like, we're not overly impressed with these people. You do it. This will be very easy. It's a form-driven business. So, of course, the first one that I did immediately turns into litigation, and there's fighting, and I need to start researching things.
Know everything about it
and
right off the bat.
Yeah, and I got paid a whopping $800, and I'm going to go do something now that takes 40 hours. And
yeah.
It was insane. And then I just kept doing them, and then before you knew it, I had done like a few hundred of them, and then I split from them, and I was like, well, I'll keep doing this, but then I'll go do other stuff.
Right.
And so when people saw that I split from them, I think they were more comfortable referring me work. And
Sure.
then it's kind of just ballooned.
And
And
are
that
you all throughout the state now?
I'm all throughout Florida, and I'm all throughout Georgia, and I'm all throughout New Jersey.
Really? I didn't know that. How did you get to New Jersey and Georgia?
Georgia was just logical because it was close. It was, I could fly, I could do day trips there.
Do you have to be barred there to do it, or?
I do the way I do it because I
Okay.
submit things to the court,
Okay.
and I
Did
like
you waive in, or did you have to sit for the exam?
I sat for the exam. I sat for 3 bar exams.
How was that?
So
It's tough the second and third time?
the second time wasn't bad. It was a 1-day exam. The New Jersey bar, I already had kids at that point and like a
Oh,
business, and
yeah.
I was up there for 2 or 3 days, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm too old for this. All these kids are freaking out, having panic attacks out on the sidewalk. But yeah, I did it, and after that one, I was like, I'm never doing one of these again.
So why New Jersey?
So I had this plan that I was going to take over the entire East Coast of the United States.
Uh-huh.
And I was
You're gonna
going
be like the Sufjan Stevens of
yeah,
Quadros.
yes, sort of.
The
Yeah.
50-state strategy.
Yeah, that's right. And so I was going to go from New Jersey into Pennsylvania and then into New York. And I just got to the point where I was like, I don't think I can take on any more of these states because at the end of the day, family law is a local business.
Yeah.
It is. Everybody operates within 4 or 5 counties, and if you go to the state of New Jersey, you've got to go and meet the lawyers in each one of those counties. That's
Right.
been an incredible challenge since I got barred there. I think 7 years ago. So I don't think I could do another state. Like if I did New York, I couldn't go into the counties around Albany.
But you can, like, what about DC? Because DC's like, you can just wave in there, right?
In theory, but I mean, I'm tapped out. I have 3
Sure.
kids now.
How big is I don't even know how big your enterprise is. Like, how much staff do you have?
I have 2 assistants.
That's it?
That's it.
That's
And
awesome.
I just work like an animal all the time.
And so, in Florida, do you find that you're concentrated in a certain area as far as what counties you're in, or is it pretty diluted throughout? Or
It's pretty diluted throughout. I think Jacksonville and the Panhandle, I do some work there, but I think those are almost like their own state.
Mhm.
But I really like doing stuff around Tampa and Sarasota, Naples, and Orlando.
Well, literally, I can think of 2 people that do them. You and it was Void Econometrics was the other one, and I think I've used you exclusively for at least the past decade. But I don't even know of anybody else who does it. Is there a lot of competition, or is it?
I mean, depends how you define competition. There's a lot of... The thing is, it's not a big market business. Like family law probably generates hundreds of millions or billions of dollars
Sure.
of fees a year. Doing quadros, the total market for that wouldn't support
Worth it
having
for-
20 people.
yeah.
So if you look at the quadro business, in every single state, there's somebody like me.
Yeah.
And then maybe like 1 or 2 other people, and that's kind of it. They're servicing the state for that. And then the biggest competition is just lawyers who do it themselves.
Right. But I'm sure you see some massive screw ups for lawyers who do them themselves.
I see some pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, so you're kind of the cleaner who comes in and fixes it.
And then there's like a psychological job because that lawyer calls you and they say, I did something really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to be like, no,
Calm down. Yeah.
you did a great job.
Yeah.
Now let me fix this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you try to do the best that you can, but sometimes things get screwed up.
So now I use the word quadro, and that's probably an insult to what you do because I think that's but a small part of it. Would that be an accurate statement? I mean, whether it's the Florida retirement system or a TPS
Yeah.
or 401k, for those who don't know that are listening, just briefly explain what it is that we're talking about that you do.
So any retirement plan that's set up by an employer is creditor protected, and it's not freely transferable. There's a limited exception where you can transfer things with these special court orders called quadros. And what's unique about them versus a court order that you get signed in a family law case, the ultimate boss, the ultimate judge of the quadro is the retirement plan itself. So you've got to basically conform what you're doing to what they want. The issue with that is there's over 100,000 retirement plans in this country, literally over 100,000. So if you're not doing this regularly, you're gonna have to go to school on it every single time.
Does it change a lot? Like kind of
incessantly.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the most annoying things that I have to deal
you
with.
just have to research a ton.
Yeah, well, I mean, one day JP Morgan is doing it themselves, and then they're sending it to this company, and then they're sending it to someone else. So the idea that you could just have one form for a company and then you're done, it's ridiculous. It changes every 6 months.
Yeah. God, at some point I would imagine if they could just kind of make it uniform, bring you on as a consultant, and just you kind of run them for the state, that would be ideal.
I would love to do that.
That's awesome. So now, this is something I've never understood, but for 401k versus like an IRA versus a SEP versus a pension versus are all those protected, or does that work differently? Or
They all have some level of creditor protection, but not all of them are set up under a set of laws that requires you to get a special court order done. So, like if somebody has an IRA that's not set up by an employer, you don't need a quadro for that. Usually, SEPs, even though they are set up for you as like a self-employed person, they're not administered by your company. They're administered by you as an individual. So you usually don't need a quadro for that one either. So it's kind of complicated. So the first thing I always ask people is, what is the retirement plan that's being divided? And I find that they have like a very difficult time answering
they
that.
don't even know. I
Right.
mean, that's it's so funny because
Because the words are interchangeable in regular life.
well,
IRA,
that's
401k.
exactly right. And I mean, even as a practitioner, that's a problem I have. But there's these kind of touchstones that I see in the practice of family law that uh, the wealthier a person is, the less they know about what it is they have.
Of
That's
course.
been my experience.
Because each individual item matters less to them.
Yes, it's not something that they're ruminating on. But I've asked people who make millions of dollars for like their 1040 form, and they're like, what, just looking at me like I'm speaking a different language. And then the other one, not to do with what we're talking about, but I love when I ask people when they're married and they can't remember, which I guess maybe happens to all of us, but I've always felt like,
Lately.
maybe that's why you're here. If you can't even remember that date, then,
Then they don't know their spouse's date of birth. That's
Yeah.
the thing that always gets me. I'm like,
or their children's middle name, or, it's just like, oh my God. So, are you in court much? Do you have to testify much for this stuff?
Maybe like 2 years ago, I was in court probably like once or twice a month to testify. Now, I mean, I'm doing everything I can to not go and testify because I find that when I'm doing that, I'm alienating the person that I'm testifying against.
Yeah.
And so I'm more and more trying to see if like a CPA can go argue about valuation issues.
Yeah, you don't want to, become the enemy.
Yeah, if you beat somebody up, they don't.
Yeah. Well,
Everyone
plus, I'm just trying to think, practically speaking, why you would be in there because.
That's also a great question.
Okay. Well, what's the answer to it?
Well, sometimes there's no reason, and I've pushed very hard to be like, I really don't want to have to go and answer that question if the judge asks it. I think there's a lot of lawyers that have OCD tendencies, and they're just like, they think of every single thing that they can like put onto the list and bring to the trial.
That's me with exhibit notebooks. I love, like, I'll walk in with like a 1.5 inch ring binder, and people have got like every pleading from the court file, bank statements for 8 years, and I'm like, who's reading that?
I think like so. I mean, I think every lawyer feels that way, but I think sometimes people are just a little like fast and loose to be like, "Oh, we need this guy to be an expert." I mean, I've had a judge be like, "I don't think you needed to come and testify to
Right.
this," and I'm like, "I agree." I
Right.
don't know
Well, you
what
could
to
charge
say.
an expert fee.
Yeah.
So is your business pretty much all B2B, or are you ever dealing with individuals like seeking you out?
There's been a little bit more of that. Like I've noticed, like amongst like police unions, sometimes one of the police officers will say that you did it for this guy. I want you to do it for me because he said that you understood this, and I don't feel like my lawyer understands it. So there's a little bit of that, but mostly it's B2B.
Yeah. Which probably makes it a little bit easier because it cuts down on a lot of the discussion you'd have to have with someone who's less. You're giving me a smile like that's not true.
One would think.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
Well, it depends on the lawyer.
Sure, that's true. That's true. Yeah, but I've found one of the areas of practice that we do here is first party property insurance, and dealing with like contractors and dealing with.
Do you like doing that?
Well, I'm not the one who's really doing it. It's my partner Marie, so I'm more generating the work than actually working on it. I mean, Florida and especially this area is a great area for it, just because of all the weather issues that you have. And the way that the statutes are written, you can recover, your attorney's fees from them, even if you show any amount of liability there. So it's okay. I mean, personally, I'd rather be playing guitar in a band or whatever. I know you and I talk about basketball and
Yeah.
music a lot. I mean, so I like it as much as anything that I do.
Well, so are you mostly doing family law now?
That's primarily what I do. We're nearing 100 cases now, which is a kind of a threshold for me that gets me a little bit worried because there's 4 attorneys here, one of which is my wife, who's kind of counsel, Marie, who does the plaintiff's work for PI and property stuff, and then Adrian and I do criminal and family.
Mm-hmm.
So 50 cases is a lot for
family law.
Yeah, to handle well.
There's a lawyer that I used to work with, Rick DePippo. Do you know him?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And he said there's nothing that you can compare, like in terms of billable hours, there's nothing you can compare to a family law billable hour because the amount of personal interaction that you have to bill that 1 hour versus if you're doing doc review for a corporation
Yeah.
or an insurance case or something like that, it's way different.
100%. It's funny, Rick DePeppo. So I had a case with him early on, and my best friend, when he got a divorce, he came to me, and I knew his wife before I knew him, and I was like, I just don't know if I'm comfortable handling this one, so I sent it over to Rick.
He's great.
Yeah, it ended up being a nightmare case, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other attorney. I'm sure you know who it is, but it ended up being like a 3-year case for like a 3-year marriage. It was.
That was very striking to me about dealing with family law, that there would be cases that would just go on in perpetuity. Like, you
Well,
think you get a final judgment, you're done, but
oh, no, no, no. Especially when there's kids. You know that every holiday. I mean, we were just talking before the show about quote unquote parental alienation and this stuff, and the games. It's the final judgment is halftime. If anything,
it's like
not,
insane.
Yeah, yeah. So well, and you so. I don't want to get too out of order, but you've actually started a podcast recently.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm working on starting a podcast. Don't have a name, but I've started to talk to people. I've done a couple of recordings.
I'm great with names, so I'll help you out with it. But you were talking about parental alienation, right?
Yeah, well, I think the entire system as it relates to kids in family law cases is bad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see anything. This system is only good if you have somebody who's like being severely abused.
Yeah.
Because the ability to file an emergency motion and get in front of a judge and say this kid's being hit, needs to be taken out of the house, there shouldn't be time sharing, that is a good thing to have. The rest of it, for everybody else who doesn't have like insane, crazy things happening in their personal life, I think it's terrible for these people.
Yeah, I've had some cases where I've had multiple experts on. One of them was the one with your brother and Sandy. I represented the paramour, I think it was the new wife or new girlfriend of the former husband, which is who.
I bet she was helpful.
Well, she called the mama, "See you next Tuesday," in front of the kids, and I think we litigated that slur for 2 or 3 years.
Oh my God.
Your brother will remember if you ask him. But I love that case because I just sat there and watched Sandy and your brother scrap the whole time. But then I had one with Ted Rochelle. And do you know Ted?
Of course.
Yeah, Ted. There's people always ask me, and I always say hire me first, but there's a couple of times where I've said, either I've even said to my own clients, just go hire Mike because, I've got a threshold for how
Pain,
contentiousness. Well, not only that, but I mean,
that's the one thing about his system. He has set up a system with so many people that can touch the case that nobody has to get that emotional fatigue with the client.
Well, that's just right, and this is something that I wish people understood better, and I don't begrudge them that they don't, but people will come in and I appeal to a certain socioeconomic strata that's different from your brother's. So he's got a lot of the bigger players in there. I have a lot of working families, maybe one single parent, families or single income families or this. So there's kind of a cap to how much I can charge, both as far as a retainer and for my time. And I'm happy to do it, but a couple things happen there, as I'm sure you know, is for me to cover my expenses, I got to take on more cases.
Right.
And taking on more cases means less time to touch each case.
Right.
And so I'm happy to take these cases, but people have to understand, if you're going to, instead of paying a $10,000 retainer, you're going to pay a $3,000 retainer, that's fine, but I can't give you a $10,000 retainer service. I'll do the best that I can. But
I just think that's the natural flow of a legal career. As you get better and you show up to work and get good at your job, you just more cases, less time on each individual one.
I think I'm a decent attorney. I think I'm an awful business person, and that's
95% of attorneys.
Well, yeah, and that's something that, as far as marketing, has really kind of been a.
You're very good at marketing.
Well, that's only happened recently, and it still remains to be seen. But it came to me in kind of a series of realizations, and one of them was Moneyball. So, and I think you and I have even talked about this before. It's so funny because
I love Moneyball.
Well, you and I talk so much on Facebook Messenger, and then after that, it's emails of my befuddled clients who don't know what's going on, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on either. Just email Matt, and let him explain it to you. But I don't think I've ever heard your voice till today. When I heard you in the lobby, I was like, God, that sounds like Mike.
No, we met at a seminar a couple of years ago.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
whenever the last time you were at the conference in January.
I was probably drinking, so.
Yeah, I probably was too.
So, anyway, but.
So I could be making the entire thing up.
Yeah, that's all right. So with Moneyball was, I think people are looking at the metrics of running a practice the wrong way.
Right.
Well, and it depends on what you want. This is where I kind of become jazz and go in a million different directions at once. But there was a period of time there after my mom got diagnosed with cancer before I had children where I was really into mixed martial arts and I was doing jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and all this stuff. And I was going to jiu-jitsu class and there was all these guys, younger guys than me, and they all wanted to compete and they were just getting after it in there. And I was a little bit older and I was beating myself up about it. And I was like, well, wait a second, why am I in this? Am I in this to compete? Am I in this to be the best? Or am I in this to like have exercise and just be around people and whatever? And as soon as I kind of changed the paradigm of why I was doing it, it just came much easier to me and I was a lot easier on myself about it. Mm-hmm. And so in a similar way with family law, I kind of reset and said, why am I in this? What am I doing this for? And of course it's to help people, but if you don't have a longevity of practice, you're not going to be able to help anybody.
Of course.
And I was giving away so much time for free and I was taking on too many cases and
I think that's bad for the clients.
Well, for sure it is, but you don't see it as such because it's like your kids, they want candy for dinner and you give it to them and make them happy, but
that's it.
Their teeth rot and fall out of their
head.
Yeah,
you're seeing it at a micro level versus a macro level.
The short game versus the long game.
And that's the thing is that the way that this system is set up, it's not supposed to be fun and cheap and free and whatever. It's supposed to be suck, and you're supposed to really pay attention when your lawyer talks because you're paying them a bunch of money for the time.
Well, so that's just it. So recently we brought a consultant on, and she's actually coming in Monday to talk on the show, but she's just been beating, and I say this in a nice way, but beating me up on emails because I have this fundamental problem about charging people a 0.1 for an email. And, she's like, you're leaving so much money on the table, all this other stuff. And I know it's true, but it's just, both my parents were school teachers. I think their combined income never exceeded probably $50,000 per year. And so
I agree that you should try to save people money, but you should try to save the money on the back end of the case by getting it over for them and doing a good job, writing good agreements.
Well, this is the exact pitch I used for you. I was like, I'll take a stab at the quadro, but I'm gonna fuck it up, and we're gonna have to go there.
That was my thing. Yeah, like when the other people who were doing what I was doing, I would talk to the lawyers when I was marketing myself and say, here's the value add. If you do this right up front in your settlement agreement, you get to leave.
Yeah.
Because if it's correct and you know what plan it is,
yeah,
and you send me the statement and the settlement agreement, you've drafted it correctly so that it's clear, it's not something that could be in dispute, you get to leave because I'm a lawyer and I'm going to come in, I'm going to get this signed by the judge and be done with that,
Yeah.
And yes, it will cost more than whatever the person that you were using before was doing, but you're going to get to leave now. How much is that worth to you?
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's another thing is I've been really big with guardian ad litems lately because,
Are you doing guardian ad litem?
No. Bringing them on. No, I don't have the temperament to be a guardian.
Yeah.
I
was just talking to Carrie Brown about that. She's guardian in a case.
That was I don't know if you're talking about my case.
No, I don't think it was.
Okay, well, I just brought her on a case, and then my client turned around and got rid of me on it because we didn't see eye to eye. But no, I think a good guardian ad litem is so invaluable.
You need it.
Yeah, and we don't really have enough of them around here. I mean, there's probably more. There's probably a lot of them, but ones that I feel can get it right. I mean, there's really like a handful. I feel.
It takes a certain type of person that would want to do it.
Because
you're only getting involved in those cases in highly contested custody cases.
Yeah, and that's not me, and I'm interested the type of people who do it. What I sense is a lot of them are true believers or very kind of really guardians for children, and I get that, but I just get to wanting to slug somebody too quickly that I couldn't be a mediator, I couldn't be a guardian ad litem.
Why I had to stop litigating.
Yeah,
I would just explode in those cases. And at some point, I was just like, I definitely don't want to litigate.
Yeah. I again, podcasting, guitar, something. Yeah. Any port in the storm that I can find to get out.
It has its moments though. Like when you litigate and you win, there's nothing like there's no other job. Maybe playing professional sports would be the only other thing, but like the way they portray it in movies, like it's fairly accurate what it feels like to win a case.
You get that high for sure.
Did you see the movie A Civil Action?
Oh, for sure.
The Travolta movie. That's my favorite lawyer movie because he loses.
Yeah.
And that's the most accurate portrayal of what it's like to really be a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about Marriage Story.
Man,
that one just knocked me out.
So presumably, because you posted about that, presumably for the same reason that I was knocked out, which is he just got it so right. What it's like getting a divorce.
I thought so, and do you know the backstory to that? That he had very recently gotten divorced from Jennifer Jason
Yeah,
Leigh, and so
and she relocated to
yeah,
California.
so it was. I mean, kind of a
And the lawyer that Laura Dern is playing
is that a real lawyer?
was Laura Wasp. I mean, everyone is saying that it's
It's
based on.
her.
They used her office. They used her conference room. That was Laura Dern's divorce lawyer. That was Jennifer Jason Leigh's divorce lawyer.
That's crazy.
That was also Scarlett Johansson's divorce lawyer. Like, she's a huge divorce lawyer out there. And clearly, Noah Baumbach, the writer of the movie,
Yeah,
had a little bit of a vendetta against her because
yeah.
he made her look.
She doesn't look as good as him in the movie.
I mean, it's so the way that she's behaving, where she's like hugging her and
Yeah.
sending her honey lemonuka tea or whatever.
Yeah. It was definitely little torpedoes being shot across.
He couldn't have just fathomed that on his own.
No,
That had to
no.
be real.
Well, and I thought Driver was just amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
amazing.
I've watched that scene where at the end where he's singing. Like, I don't even fully intellectually get what's happening there. Like, I've had to. It's kind of a, what do they call it at the end of a book?
Epilogue.
Well, let's call it an epilogue. It's kind of, there's something happening there. He's coming to terms with something when he's singing that song, but
Well, so that's from a Stephen Sondheim musical, and it's about a guy who's debating whether or not he should get married and fall in love. Like, why do it? And
Yeah.
the whole point is like that's what being alive is. So sometimes there's heartbreak, whatever. It's beautiful.
I thought it was beautiful, and I've
but-
seen him in a couple movies, but
Yeah, he was like a level up in that movie, right?
well, I'm used to the stupid Star Wars
Yeah.
movies where it's just like, it's like
He's great in those movies.
I could talk about those movies, but yeah, I mean, he was definitely the better part of it. But yeah, that one knocked me out. But it's funny because so I talked to my therapist. So I go to a therapist every week, and I asked her if she'd seen the movie, and she hadn't. The one session, but then the next session I came back and she had seen it, and I said, "What did you think about it?" And she didn't like it, and it was interesting because. We're watching it through family law attorney's eyes. She's watching it through a therapist's eyes, and she was like, I just don't buy how friendly they were, and then they weren't friendly, and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, you've not been a family law,
There's a point where Adam Driver, where she wants to let the kids sleep at her house, and he goes, "No, it's my night."
Yeah.
Because in this is just effing mind blowing to me that there's a your night, my night thing. Like, the whole advantage to my kids is that they're with both of us all the time. So
Yeah.
the idea that you couldn't just let the other parent have a night because it would hurt your claim in court.
You're literally down to counting beans in these cases. Like, I mean,
That's why-
everything becomes a battle, that the hill that you're going to die on. I use that. I don't know. I've recently learned the phrase, "That's not a hill we want to die on," and I find myself saying it like 20 times a day. One of my cases. The person will not pay child support until the other spouse returns those watches with the GPS on them. And should I return the watches? It's like, why are we even talking about this? Like, just
I literally can't even imagine. And I there's so many failings in our system, and that movie is illustrating them. There's right before Ray Liotta walks into court and Laura Dern says, "In this system, you get rewarded for being bad."
for bad behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, rewarded for bad behavior. She's dead right about that.
Yeah.
She's absolutely correct. So if you give up an overnight to the other parent, they'll use it against you later.
For sure.
I represented somebody in a modification of time-sharing action where she was saying, he kept letting me have the kids extra nights. Well, I want more money and I want to modify time-sharing.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like kind of like punishing him
Yeah. You're making me be.
to not let you have extra nights.
The other thing that drives me nuts, and this happens all the time in paternity cases, is where there's time sharing between both parents, and then a paternity case gets filed, and then all of a sudden the mother won't let the father see the child because he doesn't have a legal right until it's established by the court.
It's
And I'm
ridiculous.
like, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. And I'll call attorneys out. Like, one of the things that and I might have learned this from your brother, I don't know, but I'll ask, like, if I see the attorney do something, I'll blatantly ask them in an email, and then I'll attach it to a pleading and say,
You know what's interesting about him? For his as much tolerance as he has for pain, especially at this point, because he's been doing it now for almost 20 years, his fatigue over the custody issues is through the roof. He is so burnt out from the way that these cases are playing out.
well, as a father, as a good father, as I think he is and you are and I am, it gets you.
Sometimes clients attack their lawyers because they don't have kids and they
Yeah.
don't understand. And I wonder, is that ever a valid criticism? If you don't have kids, I think it's very hard to see just how crazy what's happening in the cases.
So I had so I had my daughter in 2014, and I was a prosecutor over in Pinellas County, and at the time I was a prosecutor in Pinellas County. There was an attorney who started there, and he was very much a character like your brother. Just he was very good, but had a very singular vision. Like he just was like a shark. He saw the goal, and that's what he went out, and he was really good at it. Then he went out into the private sector. And was really good. He figured out all sorts of stuff about SEO before anybody else did, and he was really taking down a good volume of cases. But at some point, there was a situation where he got caught in a sting for accepting pills in exchange for representing a client.
What kind of pills?
It's hydrocodone, oxycontin, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but so it was him and his wife, and so he and his wife ended up getting prosecuted. His wife was an attorney. He ended up getting a prison time. She ended up getting diversion, and when he was in prison,
wow.
When he was in prison, right before he got out, she took the kids and left to the other side of the country, changed her name, not to her maiden name, and they almost beat the 6 months, like the jurisdictional thing, to where the case wouldn't be here in Florida. But this was all happening right around the time I had my daughter, and he was just out of prison, not working. Lost his bar license. Trafficking fines are $50,000, $500,000. Has law school loans that you can't pay off, and he can't work as a lawyer to pay these. I mean, a bleak thing. And
she wanted to take the last thing that he had.
2 kids that never.
Out.
Yeah, and I was I'm so incensed by it that because I just had my daughter and just. I was just like, the thought of that being taken away from me just,
So that's what I'm going through right now. I have 3 kids. I've done what I'm going to do with QDROS.
Uh-huh.
I'm taking inventory of what it is that I want to do for the rest of my career.
At 37.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean,
you have no
bully to you. Yeah.
When you start, you have no power.
Yeah.
And you have no money, which is worse than having no power.
You
having
no
money.
shit, yeah.
And you know nothing.
Yeah.
And you come out like a bat out of hell when you're litigating and you're crazy. And then eventually you realize, like, okay, we're not really getting anything done here. I started to make money. I started a good business, and I think that the thing that bothers me the most is that what I know about family law, which is a lot because I've spent 17 years working in family law, more or less, isn't really being applied in what I do every day. And I feel terrible for the kids in these cases. And I don't think just practicing family law is going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Like if I took a step back and started doing custody cases, I think this whole system needs to be overhauled for these kids. Like in the case that you just described, okay, so he obviously made some terrible decisions.
They both made some terrible decisions.
And now we've got to figure out how to help these people reunite for the sake of their kids, so that one day we don't have to take care of their kids or worry about their kids shooting up a school or something like that.
Thank you for saying that, because I bet
welcome.
I'm waiting for Malcolm Gladwell or someone to come in.
Oh, I've already looked it up.
The incidence of that sort of thing stemming
Fathers,
from...
lack of father.
Really?
Look, Vegas shooter.
Yeah.
Not all divorces, but lack of father.
Just an absent father.
Yeah, I read a statistic that if you have a father, whether you're a boy or a girl, if you have a father in your life, you're twice as likely to be an empathetic person.
Okay.
And it's funny because the divorce system didn't used to take fathers into account.
Right.
And I think, I'm not saying that fathers are more important than mothers when it comes to developing empathy. I'm just giving you what I know from what I read, which was like a CDC statistic or something. It was something, National Institute of Health or something like that. But there's obviously a major problem with the system because people, even though it's supposed to be no fault, people are literally, like you said, counting beans, and they're trying to figure out who won their custody case.
Oh, I love it when people ask me how many cases I've won. I was like, well, everybody got a divorce. Everybody lost time with their kid.
Pretty sure all of them were losses.
Yeah. I mean, if we're being real, no one had as much money as they did when they started. No one had as much time with their kids as they did when they started.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally there's a financial case where there's going to be a clear winner and a loser. But any case involving children, I just can't imagine framing anything as a win.
Yeah.
If the parents don't end up on the same side at the end where they feel like they're not on opposite sides, it's a loss.
Yeah, for sure. So it seemed like you're indicating, and maybe I was misunderstanding, are you looking at changing your focus?
No, I'm gonna do this podcast. I'm gonna see, if people are interested in what I have to say on the topic, and then see if maybe doing some parenting education or something like that.
That would be great. That would be great. I've been trying to think of ways to kind of get outside of this and how to fix it earlier on, and I don't know.
I mean, nobody wants to be involved in custody. I mean, I think there's like a moment as a business person where you're like, okay, this person's going to pay me a lot of money to do this custody case. But I think, as soon as you get over that hump where the client is angry and you realize that you're not really going to solve their problems, and you know that the judge has no idea at the end of the day what the correct time sharing schedule is for a child, and it's totally inflexible too. Like a judge has to enter a time sharing schedule for a 6-year-old, and that needs to work
Work for
forever.
the rest of their minority. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just not going to work.
It should be redone every year, probably.
I know, but think of what that would look like.
I- Especially under the current system.
It's funny. It's like when you know something's broke, but no one knows how to fix it. You just
They're not even trying.
Yeah, well, it's true. It's true. I don't know. Well, but I think like you're talking about with the shooters, like I think if you could tie it to something that was more of a lightning rod, that maybe there'd be a greater impetus. It's funny how much everybody wants to fix alimony, but no one wants to fix.
Well, the thing is, so that's, remember I was saying before that if you're over a certain age,
Yeah.
you don't care about podcasts if you're under that age. Well, with alimony, if you're under a certain age, you're like, why do we need permanent alimony? If
Yeah.
you're over a certain age, you're like, well, I've been married to this guy for
I'm
30
not,
years.
I'm not employable. Yeah.
Well, I also think like women of our generation work.
Yeah.
So they all got educated and went to school, and they, even if they take time off with kids, they usually end up coming back and working in some capacity. My wife is like a professional painter. Like
I'm
an
glad
artist.
you brought up your wife because that was going to be my next question. So that's what she does for a living.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, now, was she doing that when you met her, or is that something that's?
Yeah, she's been doing that her whole life.
How did you guys meet?
We met through somebody I went to law school with via Facebook.
Okay.
So
How long have you guys been married? I mean, Facebook's not been around for.
we've been married for 9 years this April, and we started dating in 2009. So
Does she have her own studio, or?
yeah, I mean, she has a room in our house.
Oh, okay. Those pictures are beautiful. I remember. Was it the Vegas shooters or one of the
It was a Parkland shooting.
Parkland shooting?
That's where we are. So we knew some of those people,
Yeah,
and it was crazy.
that's really crazy. So how many does she put out a year?
Oh, a lot.
Does she?
She's prolific.
And are they contract, or is it just some contract, some she just does of her own?
It's a mix.
Yeah, and they're pretty much all people though, right?
Yeah, it's mostly figurative. She does other stuff. I like the figurative stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Though. For some reason, I find people exciting.
Yeah.
More so than looking at like a landscape or something
Or
like
like
that.
a Mark Rothko, where it's just like someone spilled a can of paint on them. I like Mark Rothko.
I do too, but I have that same thought where I'm like, I'm not sure if he did this like deliberately, made this color scheme, or if he just spilled something.
Yeah, he was like cleaning his paintbrush off, and he's like, okay, that one's a little bit dark. I gotta go a little bit lighter. I gotta go a little bit lighter.
It just seems that like in the 40s and 50s, the standard was very low for what was avant-garde. Like if you just like put blots on a paper, they were like, wow.
Well, I mean, that's true of pretty much all art, whether
Meh.
it's music or books, or I don't know about books. I feel like, you look who's the guy who like, what was his name? He was like naked and he wrote poetry and feces on the wall.
I know you're talking about. I don't know his name.
He's like the G.G. Allen of the 15th century or something like that. So
I think like music is headed in the right direction right now. So
you don't, or you do?
I do.
Let's talk about that.
So I like.
What do you mean by that?
I like the new Pearl Jam song.
I do too.
I like that these older rockers now. I think they're following the Springsteen model. All right.
Thank you for bringing up Springsteen, because I wanted to ask you. Because
Did you read his book?
I'm about a third of the way through it, so yes, but I'm also the third of the way through like 20 music. But you used to see my bedside. But you saw him on Broadway too, did you?
They saw him on Broadway. I was like in the second row. It was crazy.
Religious, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, if it hadn't been the most expensive thing I've ever bought in my entire life,
Yeah.
I had to buy 2 tickets to that. That was insane, the price. But I love him. I actually love him.
I do too. I mean, I think he may be the last of a.
It's interesting. Toward the end of the book, spoiler alert, he realizes that his recording sound is just completely out of date by the end of the 90s. He's like, I
Right.
sound like I'm from the 70s. So,
Yeah.
and if you listen to those albums in the late 90s, they're really not that good.
Like Lucky Town or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, he hit it hard in this century. Like,
For
his
sure.
albums have been fantastic. Wrecking Ball
Fantastic,
is amazing.
prolific, and he's kind of there's just that poppy area. It's funny because I think when I first became aware of him was Born in the USA, and that was
I think most people are probably.
at least of our age,
Yeah.
and so that was he was spoken of in the same sentence as Madonna, as Michael Jackson, Prince, and it was a very pop thing, but if you go back and look at his history, he's much more of a Dylan type
Oh,
character.
totally.
Yeah, and I mean, really, although their career overlapped a good deal, I mean, kind of the torch they took kind of carried the torch on from Dylan, even though Dylan's still around now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So but his concerts, they go like 4 hours, and
I wasn't prepared for that the first time I saw it. It was
yeah.
like too much. I like
What?
drank too many beers at the
Oh yeah,
front of the concert.
you gotta space it out.
Yeah.
And, yeah, time it out. But
And we hit 2.5 hours, and I turned to my wife and I was like, "Does this end?" She's like, "No, just keep going all night."
yeah, yeah.
Just
But
crowd
how was
surfing.
the show on Broadway? Was it pretty long or?
Yeah, it was. It was probably like 3 hours. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, it was something that, as a huge fan of his, being that close to him in a theater.
Oh, for sure.
Because now he probably doesn't play anywhere but less than 20,000 people in it.
Yeah.
So to be that close to him, it was sort of intimate. His wife came out and sang "Brilliant Disguise" with him, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
I never really cared that much for that song. Then
I
all
like
of a
that
sudden,
song.
I was like,
yeah.
I love that song now.
Yeah.
Now I get what it's about.
So the river and Darkness on the Edge of Town, and then Atlantic City. Those three of them, like I feel tears forming in the corner of my eyes anytime I listen to those songs for whatever reason. And like I don't even It's funny because he always talks about everybody thinks that this is the life that I lived, and it wasn't. And it's funny because I like feel like it tugging on my heartstrings, but I've never like sat on a riverbank with my pregnant bride or owed money to a loan shark.
The river's about his sister.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. But there's that one verse at the end of the river that every time he says it just gets me going.
It's a great song.
It's an amazing song.
Did you see the movie that just came out, where it's the Pakistani kid and
I did. And I saw the Beatles one where the
Yeah,
the Beatles, I saw that one.
I enjoyed
It came out at
that.
the same time. Yeah.
It was cute.
Yeah. How was that one though?
Well, the music was great, obviously.
Yeah.
And the idea was great. I don't know if the execution was that strong.
Yeah.
The best thing I've seen, like the best movie I've seen in recent memory, is Marriage Story. Marriage Story is the best thing I've seen. I've watched that movie like 5 or 6 times already.
I want to watch it more, but I don't know that I can do it.
Yeah.
Like it kind of. So I'd seen Noah Baumbach's kind of hit or miss for me, and
Did you like Squid and the Whale?
I did like it, but I'll tell you the main reason I liked it is it introduced me to Loudon Wainwright,
Yeah.
who I love him now. Like I just find him to be amazing, and he did a couple of songs in that movie. But so Jeff Daniels was really good in that.
Yeah,
but,
he was really
and
weird.
then I saw like Greenberg or something. Was it Greenberg or was it Ben
Yeah,
Stiller?
the Ben Stiller one.
And that one was just hard to like. It was kind of an uncomfortable movie. But
Yeah, it was.
the reason I like Noah though is he started out as the writing partner with Wes Anderson.
Yeah,
who,
and you get that in those.
you see, because Wes Anderson is as saccharine and sweet as his movies are. There's always a dark.
That's the Noah Baumbach. He's the Larry David of the two.
That's I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I forget who I heard talk about that, but he was talking about Larry David and Seinfeld and how Seinfeld really couldn't have been his own thing. He needed Larry David to think of like Soup Nazi, like the negative things
depth,
from the show.
For
Yeah,
sure,
the depth.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, Seinfeld's gig is just kind of played on words, but the reason I like Larry David, if you see, I have my Sisyphus thing over here, and I even have the tattoo, "The Life is Absurd." That's Larry David to me. I mean, it's just all of it is you try and you try and you try, and no matter what, you kind of have to eat the shit sandwich no matter what happens.
That show is so brilliant.
And the first one, this last season, where I love that his manager keeps getting confused for Harvey Weinstein.
I like the wobbly table thing too.
Yeah. So, well, you and I were talking about, and this came up for me for some reason. Oh, the Ronan Farrow episode.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really, really good one.
Incredible.
And graduated from college at 14 and going to Yale at 16.
And then became a Rhodes Scholar.
Yeah.
And he worked for like the State Department.
Worked in Afghanistan, worked for Hillary Clinton, and now that's what it brought me up as we were talking about shows, is one of the best shows that I ever went to, and I struggle with it now, is I went and saw Woody Allen's jazz band when he played.
Was it good?
It was amazing. It was really good, but I have these things now.
There's a lot of those things.
So I loved Louis C.K. Like I've seen him 3 or 4 times.
I think he's going to be back.
Well, he may be back, but it doesn't change what happened.
Of course. And I have 2 daughters. But the stories surrounding him weren't like everybody's not Cosby or Harvey Weinstein.
This is what I wanted to talk with you about, and I don't know why I want to talk with you about. There's nothing unique about you to this subject, but I like your point of view on things.
Thank you.
But there's this spectrum of behavior, and some of it you can maybe get past, and then some of it you can't. And trying to figure out, where that line is tough. Because like I was a big Ryan Adams fan, and he came and played Gasparilla Music Festival. It was a great show, and then thereafter,
Yeah, it turned out he wasn't a nice guy.
well, and it kind of was out there that he wasn't a nice guy, but then it was like he was leveraging his position it was kind of a mini Weinstein type situation. And Cosby was my upbringing, the Cosby Show, and so
Yeah, well, the Cosby thing is on a level unto itself because he was drugging and raping, and that's like actual rape. There was no quid pro quo,
Right.
which is what Harvey Weinstein is asserting with the two women that are
Yeah.
against him right now. So so to me, on one side of the spectrum is Cosby. Like,
Yeah.
there's no doubt that guy belongs in prison exactly
he's
where
the
he
Hitler
is.
of the Me Too
Yeah,
movement.
yes, he's the Me Too Hitler. But I mean, Weinstein sounds like he did terrible things. I don't know
Yeah.
that he's going to get charged by one of those women because it sounds like a lot of this stuff happened 25 years ago. And I listened to an interview with his defense attorney. She was being interviewed on the New York Times Daily podcast, and sounded like she's got a pretty strong case in his favor. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds like he actually could get off of this. Because when it's just like the OJ thing. When you actually start listening to what's happening in the courtroom, you're like, oh, this doesn't actually sound like he is going to go to jail.
Is
But I
it
don't know.
horrible that my interest is piqued by the pictures of his genitalia? That that it's either deformed or that he's got both organs or something like that?
You're talking about Hitler?
No, I'm talking about Harvey
Oh,
Weinstein.
I thought I was about to find something out about Hitler. I watch
No.
all these documentaries. I had no
No.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that Weinstein's he's a strange looking guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And the stories are insane. But there's probably a huge culture of that. On the other hand, I'm not rushing to Louis C.K.'s defense because I don't think exposing yourself to women is okay.
Yeah.
But I think that he has enough support, and that incident maybe isn't going to be found by his supporters to rise to the level of a Cosby-like situation.
Yeah,
That he's going to keep touring.
Well, and he had two daughters too, and I think about that, like what his life must be like, because
I mean, he's disgraced forever.
yeah.
And he deserves to be disgraced forever.
Yeah.
But I don't think. I mean, he's touring like he's
Yeah,
doing
no, I know he's
Josie.
trying to make it go, but well, and I was having this conversation with my buddy Greg, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. How many of our heroes, if iPhones and Facebook and social media were around back then, would be,
Oh
just
my God.
I mean, even the Beatles. We were talking about John Lennon. I mean, it was pretty well understood that he was physically abusive to his wife, and and
John Lennon was physically abusive to his wife.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of been
I didn't know
put
that.
out there in a number of things, and then and the Stones and Bowie and all these people that I revere. It's like I'd rather not know my heroes.
Well, that's definitely true. I don't want to know any of my heroes, but I also think the world is changing a great deal right now, and the standards are changing. And probably those people came from places where they saw a lot of that stuff happen, and nobody said anything. And it didn't used to be, frankly, it didn't used to be illegal to commit acts of domestic violence, which is insane. Whether or not somebody should be able to run to the internet and report an incident, like in the case of Aziz Ansari,
Sorry, yeah.
which was to me the worst example
Sounds like
of
a
somebody.
bad date. Yeah.
Yeah, where like because I don't want to like shame. This is a touchy subject, but like she really seemed to hang out there a long time after it got weird.
Yeah,
The story is so weird, and then going to the internet as your way of reporting it is not okay.
Well, so this happened. This happened with that Kobe Bryant thing. Remember on Facebook a couple weeks ago? When he first died, everybody was like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny because you could watch it play out over the course of like 90 minutes. Like when it first came out that he died, everybody was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and then it was, but he's a rapist, but he's a rapist, but he's a rapist, and this is kind of going back a moment to what we were just talking about. One of my biggest peeves with attorneys is when they argue to me facts about a case as though they know that for any other reason than it was reported to them by their client.
Of course, that's his whole business.
Well, but
Yeah.
I've said numerous times, I was like, well, why didn't you call the police if he was beating her? Well, I wasn't there. Well, then why are you saying it to me as if it was a fact?
And what are we going to do about it now as
Yeah.
part of this case?
So with the Kobe Bryant thing, 90 minutes after it's been reported, now it's, but he's a racist, not racist, a rapist. And I asked the question because I really didn't. I'm not quite the sports fan that you are, but I remember when that was happening. But I didn't remember how it played out.
I mean, I also think on some level we have to decide whether or not if someone did something that was bad, are they
Can they be
terrible
forgiven?
forever? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't believe, I mean, I don't believe that someone is irredeemable. There are things
Some
that are
people are
irredeemable.
irredeemable, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, is Cosby redeemable? Probably not,
yeah, yeah.
because the list is so long. But like one incident, one drunken incident when you're 20 years old,
Like
I don't know.
who's the senator that used to write for SNL that like
Oh, Al Franken.
that kills me.
I don't even get that.
That pisses me off so
Why did he
much. Well,
resign?
the problem is because that was the big critique of Trump, and so it was like, well, if you're gonna make it, you got to live by it. So I think they were
I
like,
mean, when Trump got caught saying the thing about the grabbing the pussies,
yeah,
and then all of his supporters came out and said, "Oh, that's just locker room talk."
yeah.
That's like locker room talk, which I disagree with because I've never been in the locker room and talked about grabbing any pussies. But I do, on some level, as a man, think that like there are things that do happen that are weird for men. That like maybe
Guys
that.
show their ass, and they, when they're in circles of guys, they do dumb stuff because they're trying to be the hero and get the.
So
But
so like the Al Franken thing, like that photo is not like uproariously funny.
yeah,
But I get what he was going for.
yeah.
He was pretending to grab boobs while someone was sleeping.
And he was so important on the Senate. I mean, he was the kind of the rock that all the waves were breaking on. And then when we, not that I think anything history would have changed it all, but the fact
I
that
mean, look, what the Democratic Party is trying to do is to hold their team up to a higher standard. I don't know that that's going to work for them.
it's not going to work if they put Bloomberg in because he's.
I don't think it's just him. I mean, they were doing the same thing with Biden too.
Yeah, yeah.
And bet dollars to donuts that if Buttigieg is the candidate, they're going to go after him for being gay.
Yeah.
They're going to.
Yeah, it's true. But I think, I mean, I'm thinking unless something, we got 2 more weeks till Super Tuesday, unless there's kind of a big left turn or right turn, as it were. But it's looking like Bernie's got the numbers.
I just don't see Trump losing to Bernie.
That's a separate conversation. I'm just saying who the nominee's going to be. Did you watch that debate the other night?
I did.
That was crazy.
I watched part of it.
That was crazy.
It was crazy. Klobuchar totally underperformed. I thought she was going to be stronger. Warren was super aggressive.
Well, because she's falling behind. She needed to kind of get a
I don't
bump
think
there.
she has a chance. I think after Super Tuesday, I think she'll drop out.
Who would you pick VP for Bernie?
Well, so I think Warren is gunning for that.
I would hope so. I think that's probably the smartest combination. Although they kind of were pissing on each other. Well, I guess they've all been pissing on each
It
other.
depends what he's trying to do. I mean, if he's trying to rein in moderates, he might pick somebody like Klobuchar.
Klobuchar's been impressive, and I never even heard of her. You said she
No.
underperformed that night, but
Yeah, she seemed to.
She was trading paint with Buttigieg a lot. It's like I guess I wish we were all as perfect as you.
Trying to be like the uber nerd.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen, I find Buttigieg extremely impressive. Like I in another 10 or 15 years, he could be the guy.
Army veteran, fluent in 7 languages.
When did people stop caring about having Army veterans?
Well, you asked the question a while ago about how important it is to have kids to be a family law judge. I mean,
how are you supposed to run the military if you were
not,
never in the military?
Yeah, and what's funny is I had a family law case the other day, and my client is in the Air Force, and he was there with his parents, African American. His parents were there, and I was interested because I've got African American friends, but by and large I don't. It's more not. So I was interested to know kind of their view. And the father of my client was retired Air Force. The mom was a legal assistant for a insurance defense firm, and then my client was in the Air Force. And I asked my client, what did you think of the debate, or did you watch the debate the next day? And he's like, and I could tell I was like he didn't want to answer. And I was trying to feel, where the military's coming in on Trump, because, the right's really big on you when you're in the service, but when you get out of the service, it seems like it goes the other way. And the parents were very clearly anti-Trump. And at some point they said, yeah, our superiors don't want us talking about him.
I'm sure it's split. I mean, it just.
But the thing that was interesting to me is they've been given a directive to not talk about the commander-in-chief because they're in the military. So, that's actually coming down through the hierarchy.
That's interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
That is really interesting. I wonder how high up in the hierarchy that goes.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't remember. I just want to make a return to pre-2003 when we just didn't talk about who the president was. No one cared.
It's true.
When we were growing up, no one cared that Reagan was like. You cared a little bit, but you didn't really care that much.
I vaguely remember. I have this recollection. There was one summer where there was no camps, and for whatever reason, my mom got me into one of the soap operas that she was watching. But it was the summer of the Ollie North hearings, and I remember. I don't know how old I could have been, but I mean Reagan was like through 87 or 88. When did his
term ended? It would have ended in 89. 81 to 89.
So I would have been about 10 or 11 years old, and I remember avidly watching the Ollie North hearings. And, I didn't think anything about Reagan, but I knew that, well, this seems like it's important because it was on every channel. And then Bush Sr., I had no concept of except for Dana Carvey emulating him on Saturday Night Live. And then, of course, Clinton is when presidents started to be more front and center.
It was his impeachment when all of a sudden everything started. That was like the beginning. It trickled in. And then it got really political under Bush, and then it was really political under Obama, and it's way too political now. And it's not doing anything.
But do you think we can go backwards from it? Because I just don't know how we can.
I don't think we could settle everybody down, but I think we could get it to the point where like 2/3 to 3/4 are settled down. There's got to be a compromise candidate, though, and I don't think it matters what party they come from.
No, I've said Kasich or
yeah, right. Like if Kasich would have run, we all would have been like, okay, this is the Reagan.
You can have that. We'll
you can win, right? And we won't talk about it, and that would be it.
Because that's my fear. Although I like Bernie, is it's gonna.
No, it'll be the same thing. It'll just be they'll be angry now instead of us being.
Yeah, and that swings back and forth. You got to slow that momentum down. But
the other thing is you pointed this out the other day is if he gets elected, he's gonna have an impossible time pushing his agenda through.
Right. That's the thing.
The Senate's gonna be split 48-52 one way. He's not gonna get things done.
Yeah. So, but I would just like to not be completely embarrassed.
Yeah, well, I think we all I think even a lot of his supporters feel that way. They want him to stop talking.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to my in-laws, and like my wife's father voted for him, and he wants him to be quiet just as much as I do. So.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about Bernie is, as old as he is, and as long as he's been in politics, the worst thing that they can say about him is that he's a socialist.
That's pretty bad in the United States. I don't think people like the socialist moniker.
Well, he isn't one, but that's what they like to.
I don't know why he decided to push that so hard. Like why that word needed to be his way of getting his message across. But I think it was because he knew that it would make people on the far left get very excited.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm looking at what they're going to be able to do, if they're going to be able to dunk them like they did last time. It seemed like the DNC was behind the scenes trying to figure out how they could sink a ship.
Well, they did change the system with superdelegates.
Yeah.
So before they literally could just take somebody out with
right.
superdelegates, but now they can't do that.
Yeah.
I look so far going into Super Tuesday. It looks like as long as the field stays what it is, he's going to win. I think that if a bunch of the moderates dropped out and it was just like him and Buttigieg or him and Bloomberg, it might be a different race.
Yeah.
But they're splitting the vote, and they're going to split it on Super Tuesday also.
Yeah, it's true. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
My
I was
pleasure.
hoping you'd give me something I could use on Mike. I was wanting a picture of him with like a bowl cut or something, like clam diggers on or jelly shoes or something cool like that I could kind of pull out whenever I needed it.
Bowl cut.
Yeah. I had a buddy of mine, Will, we were doing depositions in Dade City, and he pulled out a pink highlighter when he was doing something, and like 20 times throughout the depo, I was like, let the record reflect that Mr. Anderson with his pink highlighter was, and the whole transcript is me talking about his pink highlighter. Anyway, well, thank you again. I appreciate you coming in.
It was my pleasure.
All right.